Okay, you can hear me, yes, that works. I must admit, my anxiety levels dropped as I saw the curtains closing, because I'm all for natural light and fresh air, and actually it's a key ingredient to any kind of creative, collaborative space. But I don't think there's any speaker or presentation in the world that can keep your attention when you've got that as the backdrop, that lake. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to open them during breaks and stuff so we can enjoy the space we're in. But thank God for me that I've not got to compete with that. So that's good. Now, I don't know if anyone has, I'm sure many of you can empathize with what I'm about to share. And you've probably already had to do it today. But you know when you go to a social event or a work event like this and you get introduced to somebody new and the obvious question comes up, what do you do? You know, it's, and I don't know about you, but I start off quite strong. When that happens, I'm at a dinner party, someone says, oh, what do you do? And I start off with, I work at Google. That's a good start, normally. Like people are, oh, right, okay. If they're a young crowd, I say I work at YouTube, just a bit better in that situation. But then the follow-up question is, oh, what do you do there? And then I try and explain the complexities of any corporate organization and how you fit into it within the matrix that exists and the specificity of my actual job. And you start to see their eyes glaze over because you've kind of lost them, if you like. And I know I failed when I'm at dinner because they're doing this. And then all of a sudden the wall starts to become very interesting to them. So I make it my ambition to always try and be able to describe what I do in more exciting ways. And I'm going to offer you the opportunity to do that right now. So is anyone looking at this? And if I said to you that you had to describe your job in no more than 3 words, but also it has to create some excitement. You know, actually you want that person that you've met in a coffee shop, a bar, a conference like this to go, oh, I want your job. What would you say? Anyone going to offer me three words or less to describe their job? Let's get some interaction going. Otherwise, it's really boring if it's just me speaking. Yeah.
Create sparkles in ice.
Create sparkles in ice. I'm in. Right. There's two seats next to you. They will not be empty after this first break. I can guarantee you. Thank you for going first as well. Brilliant. Love that. What else? Anyone else? Sorry, say it again. Brains and space. Beautiful. Love that. I'm intrigued. Tell me more, etc., etc. I guess the thing is, right, it's often quite hard, but I'm going to offer you 3 words. I don't know many of you in this room, but I'm going to offer you 3 words that I think is a fair description of what you do, regardless of your job. And it is this. Congratulations, folks. You are all creative problem solvers. And it's the same language I use at Google, regardless of what people do for a job. It's really interesting because we saw the agenda and the theme of this conference today. And somebody said to me, oh, they're focusing on creativity and innovation. And I said, no, they're generalizing on creativity and innovation. Actually, I think it's brilliant. I don't think creativity and innovation should be kept in this box as a specialist topic, as a subset of wider conversations. Actually, fundamentally, what we all do, regardless of our job, is to solve problems and maximize opportunities in new and different ways, whether that's outthinking the opposition, whether that's helping our customers and our clients to disrupt the way that they're looking at their problems and their challenges, or coming up with new ideas ourselves. So that's the framing of today, is how do we celebrate the role that space has, our environment, in helping everybody to be a better creative problem solver. This is why I'm passionate about what I do. The world isn't lacking in knowledge and technology. I work for a technology company, but I don't have a job because of any expertise in technology at all. It is a commodity. Everybody's getting the same technology, the same data. It's what we do with it a bit differently to everybody else that gives us a bit of a competitive edge. As Nigel very kindly introduced me, my job is at Google. I'm not representing Google, should say that for contractual reasons. I'm not representing Google today. Thoughts and opinions are my own. But I've been at Google for 10 years, helping to build the skill that is being able to be creative, to solve problems and maximize opportunities in new and different ways. I do it in 2 ways. I work with teams where they need some fresh thinking. Digital well-being is a great example. We know we need to take that seriously, and we have a massive responsibility for helping people to have a good relationship with their tech. It's hard. And the experts in that space will inevitably struggle to come up with new and different ideas. My job is to provoke them and help them to see things in new and different ways. I have no expertise in that space at all. But I also spend a lot of my time training people with skills, techniques, and frameworks that help us to apply these principles every single day when we might just want one more idea just to help us have a bit more impact. I also advise boards of organizations globally, Adidas, MasterCard, things like organizations like that. But I also work a lot in the elite sporting world. Proud Englishman. So I work with the England soccer team. That's not going so well at the moment, so if you're a soccer fan. But anyway, it will get better. But also, interestingly, within the world of elite sport, there is a coaching license called the Pro License. And at the top end of the soccer world, you have to have that license as a coach to be able to manage or coach in the top end of the sport, national teams and the top leagues. There is now a module on that program called creative problem solving. So even in the world of sport, how do we outthink the opposition is a massive competitive opportunity. So that's me. Hopefully you feel in safe hands, if not a little bored because I've done too much talking. So this is how we're going to break down the next 30 minutes. We're going to talk a bit about what do we mean by creative problem solving, so that helps you all to go, I get it. Yep, I'm a creative problem solver, my teams are creative problem solvers, and my customers and clients are creative problem solvers. So that's step number one. Step number two is then, what do we do about space and our environment and how that impacts on our ability to be even better creative problem solvers? Sound like a plan? You with me for the next 30 minutes? There, good. You haven't got a choice, doors are locked. Right, so let's play a game. Okay? Interactive moment. And I know there are folks joining remotely, so hello to you if you can see me in the ether. Please play along as well. Shout at your computer screen. You might look a bit weird if you're at home with your family or in an office, but do it anyway. It's just good fun. For the rest of us in this room, this is an interactive moment, okay? So we are one team. Okay? And we are playing against every other group of people that I've done this exercise with. In a moment, I'm going to say go, and we have to come up with as many uses of a paperclip as we can in 30 seconds. In fact, actually, let me do it a bit differently. I'm going to get you to team up in small teams as well, right? So what I want you to do is to look at the person next to you, give them a nod to signal that they are your partner. If you're nodding at the back of someone's head, that isn't your partner. Go the other way. Actually, a 3 is fine. Even that brilliant. Thank you for role modeling there beautifully. I'd say if you're going around a table, it's a bit of a golf club committee. Maybe just pair up and so on. So we're going to do this in pairs, and then we'll see how we do as a collective after. And again, if you're at home or remote, just shout at your screen or count on your fingers. But your job, 30 seconds. In a moment, I'll say go. In your little group, how many uses of a paperclip can you come up with? Don't worry about writing them down. It will slow you down. Just count on fingers, okay? And we'll play the honesty system. Naive of me. Okay, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. 30 seconds. Number of uses of a paperclip. Ten seconds left. 10 seconds. Three, two, one. Stop there, folks. Stop there. No cheating, no more. Thank you for playing along. We'll celebrate a winner in a moment. We'll do a count, see who got the most. But any slightly surprising or unusual uses come to mind as you were doing that exercise? Shout it out. Anything slightly unusual for a paperclip? Oh, right, okay. Who had pick a lock or any form of weapon or criminal device? So this is a study that's been done many times in all walks of life. And that response is the number one response from psychopaths, just so you know. And the world's leading CEOs. So you're in good company. Probably the same people. There we go. Any other uses? Any other unusual uses? To reset your phone. Probably the reason why a lot of people think it has been invented. So the reset button on your phone, or to remove the SIM card. Be honest, I won't pick on you. Did anyone not say clip paper? the reason why it was invented in the first place. Thank you for being honest. We sometimes forget the obvious reason, or perhaps we didn't know. Toothpick, I sometimes hear. Someone said the other day, cleaning your belly button. I was like, oh my God. Need a tissue for the blood or whatever. But there we go. So many different uses. Let's just award a winner. Hands up if you in your little group got 7 or more. 7 or more uses. Give me a hands up. Keep your hands up if you've got 9 or more. 10 or more. Keep the hands up if you were 10 or more. 11 or more. Oh, hello. There's still, okay, 12 or more. Let's see what happens now. 13 or more. 14. Did you both go down at the same time? So there we go. A group winner, 13s. There we go. Round of applause for these folks here. Most begrudging round of applause you've ever been given, just so you know. It's like competitive group, I can tell. Listen, playful exercise, but with a purpose. That was actually a test invented by NASA. Okay, in 1967, 2 scientists at NASA, George Land and Beth Yarman, wanted to understand how creative NASA was as an organization. So they created that test. The actual test was 5 minutes. On your own, how many uses of a paperclip can you come up with in that time and write down? Okay, and they did it with everybody: astronauts, scientists, janitors, everybody at NASA. And guess what? They had data. So they created the bell curve. They were able to bucket people based on the number of uses they could come up with. And there was a top bucket. It was called creative genius. And some people were in there at NASA. Interesting. However, gave them no comparison to other organizations. So then actually what happened was George Land and Beth Yarman then started to volunteer to do the same test for other large American corporations, Ford, General Electric, etc. And they ended up actually testing all walks of society, including children, 5-year-olds. They tested 1,500 5-year-olds on the same test. Number of uses of paperclip that you come up with on your own in 5 minutes. Question for you. Of those 1,500 5-year-olds, what percentage of them do you think got the same number or more that would have classed them as a creative genius at NASA? 100, not far. 98%. 98%. Now, probably less surprising today than it was back then, okay, 55 years ago. We know a lot more about the brain today, how it evolves, and we know a lot more around how children develop and see the world. So, but still, that's a pretty big number. They did one more thing. They said, well, what happens to these 5-year-olds as they grow up? So they retested them. They kept track of those same individuals, and they retested as many of them as they can 3 times, when they were 15, 25, and 35. Final question on this. At 35, same children, now adults, same test. What percentage of them now got the number that would have made them a creative genius at NASA? 2%. 2%. So it led George Land and Beth Yarman to conclude this. Non-creative behavior is learnt. And guess what? I used to wholeheartedly agree with that statement. If anyone's ever seen the works of people like Sir Ken Robinson on YouTube, talks very passionately about how the negative impact of education systems on children's ability to be creative and so on. However, in recent years, I've changed my mind. And actually, far be it from me to challenge NASA, but I'll have a go. I challenge that statement because what it suggests, because there's a couple of things here. Firstly, what George Land and Beth Yarman didn't do was conduct a test in creativity. I'll come back to that, okay? And also, just by that very language, it suggests that what we learn has no value to creativity at work. And that isn't true either. Because there are 2 modes of thinking that are required for creativity. And what we develop as we grow up is this, reductive thinking. Now, excuse the red font, it's not a negative term. Analysis, judgment, and decision-making. And if without that, you don't have creativity, you have crazytivity, you have wackytivity. You know when you go on offsites and people go, right, blue sky thinking, any idea is a great idea. Nothing ever happens as a result of them. That's because what you haven't done is factored in the ability to analyze our options, make the right decision, go and execute it brilliantly. And in fact, this isn't even a 50-50 game, okay? We have to spend the vast majority of our time in this mode of thinking at work. I used to be an innovation consultant. It was my job, like some of you, to have ideas for companies. EasyJet, how do we help them to take 15 minutes off the turnaround time of planes so that they're making money because they're in the air for more time? How do we help Barclays repair its reputation post-financial crisis? Things like that. Our job was ideas. And we did an analysis of our timesheets. We still spent 85% of our time in that mode of thinking. If we didn't, we would fail. We would fail. And so, but the important thing is here is that without that, we don't have creativity. What George Land and Beth Yarman conducted a test in was the other mode of thinking, expansive thinking, options and possibility. Children aren't good at creativity because they're not good at the ability to analyze, judge, and make the right decision. What they are brilliant at, which is what was biased in this test, was the ability to come up with loads of options and possibility without any need or fear to qualify their quality or their appropriateness for the task at hand. That's the difference, I think, of what we're looking for. And if we think about creativity, that's what we need to think about at work. And like I said, not 50-50. What it's about is developing that agility to recognize when we might just benefit from a bit of possibility and options to help us make better decisions to move forward. Pretty theoretical. Let me give you it in a different term just to land this. Whatever you do for a job or a task at work, you have to end in this mode of thinking. It might be big 2023 disruptive thinking around how we're going to shake up the market and re-engage our customer base, etc. It might be you're working on a massive project for a new customer where you're totally trying to rethink how space is utilized for their business impact. It might be an hour's meeting because you've got a shortfall in quota in your sales target and you've just got to come up with some ideas on how you're going to make that up this quarter. Or it might be 10 minutes over a coffee with a colleague because you're presenting at the all hands and you just need an opening slide that's going to get people laughing and smiling so that they're engaged in the company meeting. Whatever it is, big or small, we have to end with analysis, judgment, make a decision, go and execute it brilliantly. However, I think you know where this is going. That will only ever be better informed by some time spent in this mode of thinking. People ask me, how do we know we've come up with the best idea to solve that problem or that situation? You never will. You can never categorically define you have the single best idea in any situation. All you can do is bring more confidence to the decisions you make by the options that you create. Now, some of you will be going, no, Kurt, there's an extreme here. It's called choice paralysis. And that is the case. You've got so many options, you don't even know where to start. Don't worry about that. If I was a leader of an organization and that's what we had, I'd feel like we were in a good place. We're the opposite end. Our brain will always feed us one option, but it's always based on how it was done before. Always done based on how it was done before. So what do we mean by creativity at work and creative problem solving? Essentially, it's just about the ability and preparedness to develop more options to help us to work with. There's a brilliant book by Dan and Chip Heath called Decisive, all about decision making, and they talk a lot about this as well. I run 5-day residential leadership programs, and we talk a lot about this, but I'm giving you the shorthand now just for speed purposes. More options, better decisions. We can only have more confidence if we've just got those more options. I'm not on social media. I'm certainly not active on it. But if I was, I'd have this hashtag: one more option. You know, if our brain is developing, our brain will always give us one option. It's called fight or flight. It will always give us an option to deal with a situation. And if all we do is build a practice at work, us and our colleagues and those around us, our customers, if all we do is build a better practice and habit of pressing pause more often and deliberately asking ourselves what could be one more option, in most cases, you have just created 100% more options. How can you not then feel more confident about the decisions you make, even if it is the original autopilot option you create, because you've just put it through the rigor of choice? Very quickly, best example I've seen of leadership around this is a leader at Google. She's a very senior leader in finance. And her principle is this: I'm not going to question my team. I employ senior people to do brilliant work. So when they come to me with a plan, the strategy, etc., it's not my job to question them, to doubt them. I trust them. But all she says is, so whenever she's with her team in that situation, says, we will go with whatever you're proposing. But before we get into the detail, just give me one idea that didn't make it. She said, and her actual language is, tell me about one idea that got left on the edit room floor. And her point is, I just need to know that what you're proposing we do was put up against some rigor of choice. I think that's a brilliant leadership behavior for us. So there we go, folks. Shorthand of what do I mean when I say we're all creative problem solvers. It's because in all of our jobs, we will only benefit from that ability and preparedness to press pause more often and go, is there another way, a better way, an easier way of doing this before we then go forward and execute brilliantly. So if that's creativity, then if that's creativity, well, how does it look at work in that context and from my experience? So, question for you: where are you when you do your best thinking? I'm sure lots of you in this room ask this question of people that you work with as well. So I'm conscious I'm amongst experts in this space. But where are you? What are you doing when you have your best thinking? I used to ask, where are you? And then over the last few years, it's just been at home because we've been forced to be there. So what are you doing? What are you doing when you have your best thinking, particularly that expansive thinking? Shout it out. Walking, sleeping, in bed, brilliant, excellent, good stuff, all good answers. Riding the bike, yeah, brilliant. Showering. The number one answer in the world is the shower. Number two is the toilet. I'll avoid anyone feeling like they've got it's the toilet. Any others? Running, yeah. So repetitive physical motion. If the market researcher in me says, what's the conclusion of this very poor focus group, i.e. poorly conducted by me? But it's often on your own, often in movement, often with distraction on something else. It isn't a coincidence that you say the places you say. I've asked that question of over 100,000 people. No one has ever said, at my desk, in front of my computer, when I'm being paid to have ideas, with the face of doom. And there is a real science around that. Like I say, I'm conscious there are probably experts, there are definitely experts in the brain in this room. So I am not an expert in the brain, in psychology or brain science at all, but I have partnered with some really credible people in this space. My expertise is in how it translates to what we then do about it in terms of how we manage our days as individuals and as teams. But I just got to tell you this very quick story. I do take confidence from what I'm about to say. I once spoke at a conference for Roche, the pharmaceutical company based out of Basel, and I was at one of their big conferences in Barcelona, and I foolishly asked the audience, I said, hands up if anyone here is an expert in the brain. And 300 people put their hands up. What I didn't realize is one of their big drugs, one of their blockbuster drugs is a neurology drug. And and there was 300 neurochemists in the room. So we went into a whole session about this, even more deeper stuff. And I didn't get a lot of feedback visually from them. And afterwards, I was getting coffee at those big urns at the conference. And a neurochemist came up to me next to me, and she came directly up to me and said, "Can I give you some feedback?" I was like, coffee cup started to shake. I said, yeah, of course. And she said, I just need you to know everything you just shared was factually correct. I was like, oh, thank God. Coffee cup steadied. Although as she walked away from the coffee urn with the cup to her lips, she went, albeit in our world, that is really basic. So there you go. That is what you're getting. Factually correct, really basic, okay? So our brain, and some of you will know this, we've got the conscious and the subconscious, okay? The conscious brain, just 15% of our brain, 1/5. It's the doing bit, the functioning part of the brain. The other 85% is our store cupboard of possibility. Everything we've ever learnt, experienced, or witnessed is in there somewhere. And connecting the two is a doorway called the reticular activating system, RAS. How open or closed that is dictates the ability for stuff to come from the subconscious into the conscious brain, and that's how new ideas are formed. Steve Jobs was correct. He was quite dismissive of creativity or new ideas. So there's no such thing as a new idea. It's just about making fresh connections between stuff that already exists. Think of it like, those of you that like cooking, think of it like a pantry. You know, it's a cupboard of ingredients. You know, we can make the cake in lots of different ways with different ingredients. The ingredients have to exist. They have to exist somewhere. And that's how ideas are had. Now, how open or closed that doorway is dictated by the speed of your brain at any given moment, the frequency of your brain. It's often called brain states, brain frequencies, And there is lots of different language to describe this, so I'm going to use just one that I'm familiar with. There are 800 different articulations of your brain states. We are not going to go through them all, which is, I'm sure you're pleased with. But let me just give you the top 4 very quickly, because you, your teams, the customers, the people that you work with and for, everybody is in one of these 4 buckets of brain state at any point that we are alive, okay? So let's start dark, okay? We'll start at the bottom end of the spectrum. Beta, okay? If I said this is also called busy beta. Have you ever heard the expression in English, I'm too busy to think? Okay, that's what's going on here. Your brain is working so fast, overloaded, mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, but there is just too many signals going to the brain. It's working too hard. The doorway, fully closed. Scientifically impossible for your conscious brain to access anything from the subconscious other than what your autopilot brain selects for you in the moment, which, as I said before, will almost always be based on how it was done previously or something a bit like it. Let me describe this. This is my beta. I'm at my desk. I'm putting some slides together for a session like this. I've also got just putting a proposal together for a big leadership program in Q4 that we're designing. It's appraisal time at Google, so I've got tabs open for each of my direct reports because we're writing their appraisals and their reviews. I've got probably too many live conversation tabs going on at the bottom. It's also my turn to cook dinner tonight, so I'm trying to think about what to make there. Does that sound in any way similar to somebody else's day? Anyone? Yeah, there you go. Thank you for being honest. If that does sound a little bit similar to a typical day for you, my question then is, what percentage of that day do you spend in that mode of thinking? And I won't ask anyone to shout it out, but if your brain is thinking about 50%, leave your job, go and write a book and help people to spend that much time there. Because the reality is, it's 85% or more of our time as people, especially knowledge workers, we use our brain for work, we spend in this mode of thinking. It might look different, but we spend in this brain frequency. Number one cause of this, we can talk about this for a long, long time. Number one cause for the benefit of today, busyness. Busyness. You now ask somebody at work, how are you? Busy is the answer. Unless it's your boss asking. If it's your boss asking, you often say, good busy. But it's become this badge of honor to be busy. How are you? I'm super busy. Like it's a badge of honor. And that's what blows my mind. At Google, we love people that have got lots of stuff going on, okay? And I'm sure you do in your organizations as well. We love people with lots of different interests that maybe have got split careers and have done other things. They've got amazing academic passions as well. They've got lots of hobbies. We love people that have got lots of it going on and maybe have got 2 or 3 projects on the go at any one time. But in the single moment in time when you need to focus on a task, if you are trying to focus on more than one thing at once, your IQ goes down by 10 points. Just to give you some context, if you are a superior IQ as classed by Mensa, 10 points is enough to take you to what they would call average. I don't know about you, my employers don't employ me to be average in my thinking. I'm sure that yours don't either. In fact, just before COVID, I went to a conference and I heard this provocation, which I've stolen with pride, and I think it's a really good one. Is busy the new stupid? And actually, there's lots of evidence to suggest that it might be, particularly in a world where technology and automation will be able to do output-driven binary knowledge tasks far better than any human being can. Our USP is our ability to think and think differently and make fresh connections. And that doesn't come with the busyness that's going on. So what are we looking for? We're just looking for a bit of alpha, okay? Along the spectrum, brain has slowed down a little bit, okay? Doorway starts to open. And all of a sudden now, we start to get some fresh stuff to come between. Best way to describe this, you've got singular focus. This is called task positive state. You're actively working on a task, but you are relaxed in doing it. You're not burdened under the pressure. What does alpha look like at work? Deadlines. Deadlines are a good way of alpha. Now, some people feel really pressured by deadlines, but actually, I don't know about you, but deadlines for me cause all of the busyness to fall away. I'll close down my email. It makes me do things that I perhaps I'm not disciplined at doing when there isn't a deadline looming. I'll close down all my other stuff. I'll stop looking at Sky Sports. I'll create focus to get that done. Deadlines are a good thing. This is an alpha day. A date in the calendar where we come together to focus on a specific area of our work and our passions and colliding it together. And particularly in an environment that is relaxed, where hopefully there's people smiling. We're not there going, if today isn't successful, we're screwed. You know, it's like that's not the vibe that I'm certainly getting from today. So singular focused, but relaxed. One task at a time. Let's keep going on the spectrum. Theta, doorway now fully like nice and open. Loads of great stuff. Theta's a really big, wide spectrum. Deep theta, early stages of sleep. So just falling asleep and some of the early stages of sleep. Hallucinogenic drugs. I'm not promoting them, but that's there. Meditation's there. Shallow theta, anything that allows your mind to wander. And that's probably what we're gunning for at work as leaders and the things that we can control. The thing about theta is it's individual for us all. There's a brilliant book by Emily Gosling. It's called Great Minds Don't Think Alike. And she surveys 52 brilliant thinkers, past and present, and how they all have very different ways of going about their challenges and their problems. Agatha Christie, amazing writer, never wrote a book at a desk. Okay, in fact, she rarely sat at a desk. She didn't have an office. She would walk around with sometimes up to 6 different notebooks on her presence. And as she was walking around building storyline, plot, characterization, she'd just pull out a book if she saw something interesting. And that's how her story would form. And only right at the last minute did she get reductive to go, I've just got to type it out now. I've just got to type it out. Bjork used to use the Icelandic outdoors to help craft her music. Verses on the downslope, choruses on the upslope. That was how she used it there. So the point is that we are not actively trying to solve the problem. Okay, it's called task negative state. You're not focusing on the task, but this is your default neural mode. You will naturally come up with fresh connections when in this mode of thinking. So you probably see where I'm going here. How do we start to allow ourselves and others to spend a bit more time in this mode of thinking? Because we need to challenge what good looks like for human beings at work. Who's got a to-do list? Who's got a to-do list? I have. It's great. Yeah, all good. Who's got a to think about list? Less hands. Some people, but less hands. That's the difference that I think we need to make. And then how does that translate to space? How do we create more thinking space? Number one reason why people don't spend more time deliberately gestating or thinking about their challenges, guilt. Guilt. Actually, as leaders, those of you who are leaders, there are structures you can put in place. But if we own it ourselves, it's our own guilt. Because we've been conditioned to think that this is productive and busy and adding value, as opposed to just deliberately thinking about the output of our tasks. Just to close it off, running out of time, I want to save some time for a few questions. Delta, doorway fully open, fast asleep. Crazy amount of stuff can come from the subconscious into the conscious brain. It's only been in recent years that we've really started to accelerate our knowledge and understanding of the brain in this state. So things are changing a lot. Is anyone a Beatles fan? Paul McCartney, famous for writing the lyrics and music to Let It Be and Yesterday in his sleep. There was stuff going on here. John Steinbeck wrote of Mice and Men, used to call it the committee of sleep. I'm going to put it to the committee of sleep, i.e., I'm going to sleep on it. Nike, if anyone's wearing Nike, one of the most famous brands in the world, the brand for Nike was invented overnight in someone's sleep. Someone was asked to come up with a brand about 7 o'clock the night before, said we need it by 9 o'clock. Spent a couple of hours doing it, a couple of bottles of wine, nothing. Went to sleep, woke up, Nike. And the swoosh didn't take much longer either there. So there is some science here that we can start to now latch onto, if you like, to give us some confidence around the value of just having maybe a 24-hour cycle. When I'm running a workshop to help a team solve a problem, and they say, we've got a day to do this, I go, great. Let's start at 1 o'clock on day 1 and finish at 12 o'clock on day 2. Because the value that you get from just allowing people to go home, travel, walk, run, do their thing, hang out with their kids, and sleep is much more powerful than me spending 9 hours between 9 and 6 trying to slog it out with people, albeit in alpha. In alpha. So there we go. So what's the so what here, folks? One more thing on this. Who does their best thinking generally in the morning? Who gets a burst of mental energy first thing? I'm extreme in that, right? We are, as Matthew Walker would say, who's written a great book called Why We Sleep, and he would call us morning larks. Anyone know what sound a lark makes? we could play that game. We won't do that. If we were in the afternoon, I'd get you to be making lark sounds now, but we won't do that. We're morning larks. I'm an extreme morning lark. 4 or 5 a.m. is my peak time for me if I've got to focus, create, that expansive stuff, solve problems. Who's the other end of the spectrum? Who gets their burst of energy late into the night, early hours even to some degree? You are maybe a more common expression. You're night owls. And then the last one, who's a bit more typical, but there is no such thing as typical. You know, you wake up, of course you're a bit tired when you wake up. That 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock meeting is your absolute best. Like, that's when you're rocking it. And then, of course, you'll get a bit tired as the rest of the day comes. Anyone associate with that? Yeah. You're midday hawks. And by the way, it's really hard. This is not a binary, you're one of the three. But actually, when research is done, in society, we are a third, and a third, regardless of our jobs or our professions. A little nudge on that. How many of you deliberately structure your day to really maximize your circadian rhythm? Right, yeah, brilliant. If you do, then amazing. Now, again, some of that is corporate environment. Is the environment allowing us that? Typical one, especially when I travel to maybe smaller, more remote offices of Google or other organizations, and they'll go, oh yeah, the office doesn't open till 8:30. We can't get into it. You know, we're a tenant of a building, can't get into the office till 8:30. One of the things Google has done is to try and bring consistency where every Google can access any office, wherever they're based, 24 hours a day. Not because we want people chained to their desk, but we want people to be able to work in the space when it suits them to work. And for me, I often get into work at 5 a.m., but then I have no qualms about leaving at 2 to go and get the kids and maybe and go home with a thinking task in my brain. Let's bring all this together. I want to make sure we've got some time for questions. So what are we saying here? So if this is what creativity looks like, a better appreciation of both modes of thinking that are needed for us to solve problems, not just crazy wacky-tivity, let's have loads of ideas, 100 Post-it notes on a wall, and then time runs out, you all leave. Everyone goes, good energy, really good energy. Anything going to happen? Not a chance, right? You know, because actually what we've not done is been disciplined to protect time to get reductive around that. So both modes of thinking needed. However, at the same moment in time, they mix like oil and water, i.e. they don't mix at all. So what can we do, and in your role and your expertise, what can we do to help people to be very deliberate about signposting the difference between those two modes of thinking? And actually, if you sort of reverse engineer it, that's what we do really well. When you see great spaces for people to work, it is clear. There is space that's designed for you to be heads down, maybe doing emails, largely reductive tasks, even meeting rooms that are about decision making. But then there are spaces that are much more conducive to expansive collaboration, colliding fresh perspectives together, etc. But also, what are we doing to ensure that we as individuals are more disciplined about creating alpha? Number one, get rid of the busyness. Technology is the problem there. Email, yeah, not listening at all, just because you can't. Okay, people say I'm multitasking. It's impossible to multitask. We multi-fail. Okay, there is hundreds of studies that have been done around this space where if you are trying to conduct two tasks that require cognitive load at the same time, you do neither very well. It's not even like, Kirk, this is really interesting, but the reality is I've got to get this done. You don't get this done very well either. You fail at both. So how do we just get disciplined about singular focus, but also being relaxed? At Google, we have an expression, you don't have to be serious to solve serious problems. And actually, that is an absolute link to the value of alpha. The minute that you are in beta, you're frowning, the seriousness or the deadline of the problem is taking hold of you mentally, your ability to have new ideas disappears. And we often say, look, we work on important stuff. And everybody does, right? In our context, we all work on important stuff. But it doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. So maybe that's a nice reframe. What are we going to do to give ourselves more permission for more thinking time, guilt-free? Different for everybody. Those of you in the room that are leaders, what can you do to role model it? What can you do to instruct it? What can we do to load the deck in the favor of thinking about stuff versus output. Lots of people say to me, I don't have time to do this. And I go, why? And I go, it took me 3 days to put the deck together. And in some organizations, particularly in things around film and entertainment, there is a legacy where the decks need to be as polished as the movies, right? So no one's doing anything about new ideas because they're just making the decks look beautiful. And I'm not sure that in the world, well, firstly, technology will take care of that for us in a few years' time. It will learn our personal styles of how we put decks together, and AI will go, how's this for a deck? You know, you tell us what you want to put in it, we'll deliver it for you. Consistency of font, beautiful presentation, that's not far away. So that's happening. This isn't about saying we should all be paid to go and do more thinking time. We're paid for our output. I get that. I'm paid for my output, you're paid for your deliverables and so on. That doesn't change, right? But hopefully just recognize that the importance of thinking time in creating better output. And last but not least, your awareness of your chronotype and that of your teams. Those of you that have the same team meeting at the same time on the same day every week, just recognize that 2/3 of your team might not be at their best. And you are always stacking the deck against them in that favor. So how do we keep things varied, or how do we just be aware of when people, I see it, there was an organization in London, and when they're interviewing new candidates, they do two things. They say, when would you like to be interviewed? And if that is 10 o'clock at night, we will interview you at 10 o'clock at night, if that's where you'll be at your best. And also, where would you like to be interviewed? And if that is on your sofa in your slippers, that is where we'll come and interview you. Because we want you to be in an environment where you will be at your best. Unless the interview is, how do you think under pressure? And some interviews are, but most interviews are, how do we help this person to share their story really powerfully so that we can understand them at their best, to make a fair call as to whether they're the right candidate for us. So I love that flip. So what's the so what? If you take one thing away from today, I would say it's simply this. How do we just ensure that we are always explicit in our signposting? What do I mean by that? Explicit with whether we want people to be expansive or reductive. This isn't hard, just bloody tell them, right, is the key here. Language like, I've got an idea, can you tell me what you think? That is probably a reductive ask, when actually what I want is collaboration. So maybe being more explicit with my language. I've got this idea, I've got no idea where it's going, but can we just kick it around for 5 minutes, see if there's something in it before we dismiss it? That is much more likely to have the other person go, I know how I need to be in this state. But also written words, titles to invites. Your signposting starts the moment you invite someone to a meeting. So if that meeting is quarterly business review in 3.1, that is probably going to be signposting a bit of reductive behavior. It's quite analytical language. Whereas, how do we make 2023 the best year ever when we all get the best vacations with our families as a result of the success of the organization? That's a long title for a meeting, by the way. I'm not suggesting that. But you get it. I'm there going, I'm personally engaged, I'm emotionally engaged, and I'm probably more likely to be expansive around this. How do we be more explicit? But of course, and this is where I'll stop because you're the experts, how do we ensure the space is very explicit in signposting as well that we're working with? But also as well, how do we just help people to be more deliberate about creating alpha environments, relaxed, with singular focused, but also how are we helping people to spend more time deliberately thinking. And one thing COVID has done is challenge some of the conventions around when those things happen. So just to leave you on here, for me now, the office is a great place for collaboration. Anyone used to say, like, the office used to be the worst place for having ideas, for collaborating. It was almost like that was why your jobs were so hard. Around that, people go, I'll go home, I do brilliant thinking at home. I don't know about you. That used to be the case for me. Home is now horrible for me. I can't wait to go to work, to collaborate, to have ideas, to create focus for expansive thinking. Too much distraction around that. Problem solving, focus in that expansive mindset, and the value of casual collisions as well. Just those bumping into people in the micro kitchens or in those in the corridor that you haven't seen for a while that might give you a different perspective on your challenge. And away from the office, again, for me today, that's the thinking time. I used to say, so if this talk had taken place 2019, I would have said this to you. Go to work with your to-do list, go home with your to think about list. I actually think it's maybe the opposite now. Go home with your to-do list. Like, fine, be more productive. I can get 3 hours more emails done if that's what I'm doing that day if I stay at home. But actually, if it's about kicking things around and coming up with new solutions to ours and our customers' challenges, well then, I would definitely go to the office now and invite people to come to those fresh spaces that we haven't been able to be in for a long time. It's different for everybody, but hopefully there's a bit of a perspective there. Folks, the number one thing is get it? Terrible joke to end. I told you, smiling, you're in alpha. You're in alpha, at least you're in alpha, but just be deliberate. Don't leave it to chance. Hope alone doesn't make it happen. Thank you so much for listening to me at the start of the day. Enjoy the rest of the space, and I don't know if we've got any time for questions.
Thank you, Kirk. Fantastic. Yeah, we do have time for a few questions, and for those of you who aren't aware, and those people at home in particular, you can see the ways of getting your questions to Kirk and the other speakers today on the back of your name tag. And for those online, I should say, you can email or text through your questions, and then we'll listen to those. Someone will relay those in the room. So, we get the views now.
You have to compete with it. You have to compete with it now, not me.
We get the views. So, so any questions for Kirk? I mean, there was so much to unpack there. I have lots of questions, but I'm kind of struggling to formulate them. But I suppose one for me is that, and in the old days, and maybe not so old days, real estate premium, and a lot of estate managers, they think it's about desks and packing in desks and getting the maximum. And from what you've been saying there, we need more space for thinking, maybe a space to go running, maybe a space for cycling, maybe showers, maybe sleep pods, all this stuff that's non-desk. So how do you convince the powers that be that it's not just about a desk?
Well, I'm really lucky at Google because that's not how Google naturally thinks about it, but it's becoming harder and there's a bit more. And also as well, I think one of the things that, and some of you might know the science behind this, but I have a strong belief that let's not underestimate just the power of belonging that someone having a desk has. So this whole, we're going to just have a desk occupancy based on 70% occupancy, everybody hot desks and gets a locker. I think there is a risk, a watch out to that. I totally get the argument for it. There is a watch out to that, I would say, in terms of people feeling belonging and so on. And how many people truly will grab their stuff and go, I don't know those people over there. I'm going to go and work with them today. We just have its form. So I think there is a lot of power in giving people a base camp that is a desk space. But, we can make those smaller and so on around that stuff. But definitely then, how do we then make more of the space? One of the things I'm hoping our new King's Cross office has in Google is a meeting room full of just 8 sleep pods. And the hope will be, because actually the science is 20 minutes in a sleep pod, you engage theta, gestation time happens. So currently, Google and other organizations, some of yours, use sleep pods as a general tool that people might be able to use. But actually, how do I use it deliberately as a meeting leader? And actually, I can see that working. An hour meeting, 10 minutes. What's the problem we're solving today? What's going on? Let's kick it around, get under the skin of it, align around the goal for today, and then 20 minutes in a sleep pod, and then 30 minutes to solve it. I don't know, but experiments suggest that that's a really powerful thing. So I think spaces, things like that. But I always say this: Google and other organisations are a go-to for, what does this look like? What does brilliant look like? And it often then centres around costs. We were talking yesterday. I've got pictures. I can show you some chairs in Google's offices that cost like €2,000 that no one ever sits on because they're really impractical for their purpose. And so function over form is a must. I've also worked with organisations that go, we can't afford to give people breakfast and so on. And actually, I've seen the power of just creating space for people to be able to, and a microwave where people can just break bread together, have their lunch together without any free commodities like food and so on around that. So I think more space, but desks, I actually think there's some value in people having a home base.
Yeah. Have the days of slides and beanbags gone?
Yeah. To the degree, well, the point is, this is the thing, we weren't deliberate about it. So there may have been, I still don't know, there may have been some science into why we would, populate offices with beanbags and stuff like that. Who's been to a meeting where you go in and there's like putty on the table and things for you to play with and so on, but no one's ever told you why it's there. And so actually that can signpost that this is a bit of a silly meeting and we're here to solve a big corporate problem. Whereas actually allowing people to have their, just do something to occupy themselves physically by just playing with stuff or making Lego whilst the conversations are going on is a really powerful science. So I think what we all of that stuff still exists, but we're much better at being really deliberate about helping people to understand why it exists.
Okay. All right. Quick questions from the floor. There we go. Do we have a mic? Yeah, the mic's.
If you want to say it, I can. Oh, there you go. I like the fact you waited for the mic. Most people just start talking. It's like, I love the fact you want the mic.
I don't know if it works, but yeah. Thank you, first of all. I just wrote some things down about creativity, and my question is, should creativity always be productive? In a sense that, should it always be problem solving? And you talked a bit about children losing, that side of them when they grow up. And should we find some ways to, in the workplace, either with, the space itself, all the meetings, how they go, that nurture this wacky creativity that can, in these terms, help us with the problem solving?
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think the thing is, at work, the number one reason why creativity doesn't get a better reputation is because we're not good at articulating why we're doing it. So it is just then the home of offsites or when times are good. I always say my job is done when I see the senior leaders I work with go, we've got a code red, let's get creative. Because at the moment what I hear from senior leaders is we've got a code red or we've got a problem, let's stop doing anything new and different and double down on what we've already done. So I think I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I think we will benefit so much more if we just become a bit better at being able to articulate the benefit that we want to get from being creative. And that benefit might just be people feel more empowered to and psychologically safe to speak up when they have an idea. That could be, but let's be really clear about it. We're really good at articulating the impact that we do on strategic time or blah, blah, blah. And it could be money. We will make... Our hope is that we will double the revenue from this customer next year by approaching that relationship in a totally different way to what we've done previously. So I think that ability to articulate. Now, the question would be, where does failure live? Because that's the big one, right? So, and maybe failure is a defeatist word. Where's the risk of failure allowed to live? Because if we don't allow people to try things and it not work, then nothing new will happen. So I think, actually, we really want to double that revenue from that customer next year. Sorry if I'm using a commercial example. But guess what? Actually, we're going to create a safe space for things to be tried without them. I'm conscious of time. Yeah,
I think we will wrap it up there in terms of time. But can we give Kirk another big round of applause and thank you.
Thanks, folks. Thank you.